for the founders who are first time AI founders who have no technical background as such, how do you recommend that they structure their AI discovery, pilot or POC or a value proposition for that matter?
Irrespective of if it's to do with AI or some other tool, right? So back in the day, we might have called it data science. Now, obviously, the marketing bandwagon is we call everything AI. If you want that 10 million valuation, then it's got to have AI in it, right? And I think the fundamentals are still the same in that it all starts off with what it is that you're solving. What is that? So don't kind of think of what's the AI that I build into this. Really there's a lovely saying that I'm sure you've all heard: fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
And Min, if AI disappeared tomorrow, what would you miss the most?
Wow, if AI disappeared tomorrow, you know what? I might have to start. So I made this kind of big statement about, if you want me to run this, then it's my rules. And my rules are, there's no PowerPoint in the analytics lab. It's going to be about show, not tell. It's going to be engaging. We're going to let the client talk more than we do. And that I think will be much more fun. We're going to play with Lego, because who doesn't love to play with Lego? Make it fun, as opposed to we're the consultants, we have all the answers even before you've even told us what the problem is.
Hello. Welcome to the Priceless Conversations, the podcast where we navigate the art and science of product management, automation, AI, and pricing. We do this with a mix of wit, wisdom, and some dashboard war-related stories. Hi all, I'm Satya, a scientist who found her way in the world of AI and product management, and I still use research, data, and connect a lot of dots to solve problems.
I'm good. Thanks so much, Satya. I'm Amit. My work focuses on product and pricing strategy, more specifically, how team decides what to build and how to capture the value of it. I spend a lot of time examining the pricing questions most people avoid, and I share field-tested insights that actually hold up under pressure. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's explore this together.
Yes, and we have Min today, who is a data forensic expert. This is how I know him from the beginning, and then a fantastic storyteller, and now frequently visible on our LinkedIn pages as Min's Minute Modcast, and also Min's Minute Mates Modcast, wherein he uses different avatars and different topics on AI to explain what's going on in the world of AI and what to be cautious about, what to use and what not to use. Hi, Min.
Hey, hello guys.
Hi,
How are
Min.
you?
All good.
Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful podcast.
Thank you for coming, Min. So I really want to crack on and start with, you have spent over a decade in forensic analytics, and I've been quite curiously asking you questions before as well on this topic, and I want that our audience listen to it as well. This one particular question I have is, what was the one case in your data forensics time that you think interprets truth in a different manner?
Okay, so great question. So for me, the reason I got into this whole space was I really wanted to do something that helps society at large. And when I realized I couldn't actually be a policeman, because I'm like min, short for minimum, not very tall, and yet yes, I'm right to be a policeman, I thought, right, I'm going to use my techie skills to help solve, corporate crime. And that's what, to solve that. So more and more during my career, we were getting to a stage where the evidence wasn't in someone's filing cabinet, it was all electronic. So they did sort of technical forensic experts. It was kind of a field that was just starting back when I was doing it. And how do you look at that? But I used to watch a lot of detective and crime programs when I was growing up, and it was like very much like Columbo, which was far you understand the reference because you guys weren't born then, or Quincy, where they were like, just slap these pieces of paper and they kind of make out they don't really know what's going on, but they kind of really knew what the answer to the question they were already asking was. And for me, it was a blend of how can you use technology to help the investigators with working out who was involved, how they did it, where the money went, But the more and more of these investigations I did, what was a really interesting thing for me wasn't really the technical solution of how to do these techniques. It was very much the human element as to why people in the first place were doing these frauds, corruption, bribery, and
Mm.
how they convinced themselves in their mind that I justified what I did, something known as like Maslow's law, where you kind of once you get your okay, I can basically survive. I've got a decent living now. I kind of want something over and above that. And for me, the most intriguing part of every case, and to your specific question, there was one where there was an investigation where a whole bunch of money kept disappearing from an organization and it was getting bigger and bigger over a longer period. We were asked to investigate, and I started assembling all the electronic intelligence from emails, from corporate systems, procurement systems, even like camera logs and all sorts of things. And we identified this individual that had some interesting patterns by looking at the statistical patterns and all sorts of things. And at the beginning, he was just like, why am I even here? I've got nothing to do with this, blah, 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 and very much just denial, denial, denial. And then we
Wow.
kept slapping the pieces of paper on saying, okay, can you explain this? And he's like, I have no idea who this person is. And then we'd find something to show like they had a conversation or whatever. And the most interesting part of it was eventually, I think he knew the game was up because the evidence, the data showed that, yep, we pretty much knew what was going on and the pattern of how he was doing his frauds. And at the end of it, it was that human element where he's like, kind of hands up, yep, it was me. But the thing he was most worried about was telling his family, because to his family, he was seen as being super successful.
Yeah.
He was doing really well at work. He was getting these promotions. He was getting all these bonuses. In fact, he was just embezzling the company. And it was that thing that really kind of struck a chord to say, okay, that's kind of the, and for me doing the forensic work was always about that human element as to
Yeah.
why do people do what they do. And I guess it's the same with your expertise in products. You might design the products in one way, but how people use it might be in a different way, same more generally. So yeah, that was a really interesting case about that final outcome as to why people do what they do.
Absolutely. And also at Deloitte, you founded the UK's Analytics Lab. And
Yeah,
did that really start your entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial journey?
it did.
How
Now,
did that?
something I should explain is I always introduce myself as the world's biggest introvert. And although I can just about cope with this number of people on a podcast, and the irony is, as you both know, my day/night job is sort of networking and meeting lots of people. But to this day, when I get home in the evenings after I lie down and face the corner. And so when the opportunity came to kind of be the face for analytics for the firm and really connect all our, at the time it's about 27 different analytics teams around the UK, but also to present to CEOs and their boards on a daily basis as to how can you use data, what is data, how can you make better, smarter decisions with using data. They sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, you'll be the perfect person to do that. It was supposed to be for 12 months before I went to fighting crime again in forensics, and every year they just
Wow.
said, can you just stay another 12 months? And before I knew it, it was like 6 years had gone by. Yeah, I was running the sort of the biggest sessions for the firm and entertaining CEOs with Lego and robots and showcasing how you can actually practically use some of these technologies in the workplace. And that was where I realized, because I was bringing in lots of startups, lots of entrepreneurs and scale ups into the lab, to big large corporates that typically will move slower, the decision making is a lot slower. Here's how you can really be at the cutting edge. Here's real use cases for something like a blockchain or AI before even it was known as AI, right? So, and that's when I
Yeah.
realized actually I want to hang out with the cool kids and be much more at the cutting edge of what's going on. And that and sort of midlife crisis, because I was 48 and a half at the time and I'd just done 25 years in one company. So I thought maybe it's time just to go and try something new.
Sounds like more of a Sherlock Holmes story. Any chance you lived in Baker Street?
Well, I pass Baker Street every day on my way to work, so maybe that kind of rubbed off on me a little bit. Yeah.
So what was the genesis? When did you, a lot of Sherlock Holmes and these forensic data analytics.
Yeah.
At the end, it involves tying up these small pieces of data and connecting them, creating a story out of it, which leads to a conclusion or probably, catches the thief in your case.
Yeah.
When did you realize that this data story is often the data matters more, but then the story is what that ties that data together?
And you bring us on to one of my favorite topics about storytelling. So going back to the
Okay.
previous question of when they asked me to set up the analytics lab, and it was a bit like that Harry Potter movie where initially they said, here you go, here's a room the size of a cupboard, like the one Harry Potter lived under the stairs. They go, here you go, off you go, you can call this the analytics lab. And every year they said, okay, this is like actually really working well. Here's a bigger space and here's more people, etc. And it got bigger and bigger. And I said, if
Mhm.
you want me to run this analytics lab, there's a few sort of rules that I have about how we're going to run this place, because I've sat in on the back of some of these meetings of where we've run these sessions previously for clients, and no one needs 40 slides in 20 minutes, right? And where you literally see the client, sneakily looking at his watch and he's zoned out after 5 minutes. So I made this kind of big statement about, if you want me to run this, then it's my rules, and my rules are there's no PowerPoint in the analytics lab. It's going to be about show, not tell. It's going to be engaging. We're going to let the client talk more than we do, and that I think will be much more fun. We're going to play with Lego, because who doesn't love to play with Lego? Right? Make it fun, as opposed to where the consultants, we have all the answers even before you've even told us what the problem is. So that's how it started. And the more and more I was doing this, and I had a team of data scientists and engineers and lots of technical,
Okay.
kind of realized that sometimes, like with more technical people, and I'm sure it's the same with product people who are also technical, we're so happy just to kind of solve the challenge and create the algorithms and create the products, that then we leave
Yes.
it to what I call regular humans to go and talk to the business about, okay, what we've actually created. The challenge with that is I was finding that the more technical people were then being not really given the limelight. They weren't really being promoted, because they were just like, they weren't the ones who were then translating what they were doing to a way regular technical background myself, who then just seemed to have made a living by talking for a living. It's like, if I can do it, and being sort of super shy and an introvert, then anyone can do it. So I started kind of mentoring and coaching them, and I developed this course about the art of storytelling, of how do you really engage with your audience. And the more I was doing it, I must have run hundreds and hundreds of sessions for clients, I really kind of narrowed it down to these 8 pillars of storytelling. And so much so that I was asked by, we have like we still have an internal university called Deloitte University. And in essence, when you got promoted in your career from to manager, senior manager, director, partner, you would go and learn some of the softer skills. So they asked me to create this course about, can you teach our people who now have got promoted so they have more sort of opportunities to sell, to talk to clients, and how do you actually engage with your audience? Can you share your pillars of storytelling? So it's partly that, but also obviously with our Indian heritage, and I'm fortunate enough that my parents live with us most of the time. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, my dad tells us stories, and even when we're like, Dad, I think I've heard this one before, he'll tweak the ending and make it like a new story. So I think I think I get a little bit of the storytelling from him. But in this day and age where our attention spans have gone to mush, right? If after 20 seconds, if that, people are already thinking of, okay, how can I scroll this up to the next thing, right? More and more, it's so important to engage your audience in telling a story, be that about a product, so they kind of have a look at it in more detail, or just generally about yourself as an individual. How do you make sure that people don't automatically just start on a Zoom call or meets or whatever, start to sort of secretly just, turn the camera off and just have a little scroll on some social media instead? So it was all about these pillars, and it was everything from, starts with a question, right? And I have a wonderful little story for you around how
Okay.
I came up with this pillar. So when we set up the analytics lab, I went around all the different parts of Deloitte and handed out these flyers like, hey, we've got this super cool lab, we've got robots, we've got like Lego, we've got like really cool things. come over and bring your clients, and we'll like amaze them with our brains and our analytics and technology. And after a few days, like we had our first people just knock on the door and said, "Hello, we're looking for the analytics lab." I'm like, "Yep, that's us. Come on in." 2 days, like, so they came in and said, "Well, we're not sure we want to come inside. Here's a CD." So that kind of dates me instantly, right? It's either CD or USB. They go, "Here's some data. We'll come back in 24 hours, and you can see what sorts of things you can do with this data." And in our excitement, we're just like, "Brilliant, let's have that data." I told everyone, like, "Right, we're going to stay here all night because we need to wow these people, get the coffee machine on." But they said, "Not for you, Min, because you're hyper enough, so no coffee for you." Away we went, and we started crunching the data. We looked at correlations, patterns. All the data visualization tools had just come out, so we started putting it on Click and Tableau and looking at these patterns. And in the morning, the team came back in, and to our amazement, they brought one of their senior partners along as well to the meeting. So I'm like, "Okay, cool, nice." They all sat in the front, and we started going through, all of the findings and the analytics and these really cool patterns that we found, and brought up the first couple of slides. And they started looking at each other and looked at the partner, and he didn't look too impressed. And after a couple of minutes, the partner stood up. He's like, "This is nonsense. What's going on here?" And he walked out. And I thought, okay, I'm so fired. I'm not going to make it to 25 years, right? Maybe that wasn't a good plan. And here's the story in the first pillar. In our excitement, because finally we had someone come to the lab and we were showcase our analytics prowess to them, we
So
forgot
that was the tension in your story.
yeah, we forgot the fundamentals of. We had no idea who these guys were. We had no idea really what this data was. We didn't really know what problem they were trying to solve. And yeah, we were just like crunching the data like like nerds really to kind of showcase like what we could potentially do. And that's where I came up with the first pillar. Start with a question, right? So in hindsight, what we should have done is, at least have one of the regular humans, as I call them, stay with us to say, "Okay, what is this thing you do for a day job? What is this sector? What is this data? What are you trying to solve here?" Right? So if we knew the answers to that, then we could have sort of either proved or disproved it and done something much more. So that was a lesson well learnt, and thankfully, like we managed to redo it once we understood what their question was. And yeah, they came back for more, and literally then it started a flurry, as I said, of constantly being booked with questions. So start with a question is like a super important one. There's lots of other ones, but another one that comes to my mind is like with a movie, like every tested, what do you include and what don't you include? And I see a lot in my day job now with listening to pitches for a living with startups, and sometimes the indices and tiny little writing which you think is some sort of optician's test and you don't really understand what they're talking about. And I say less is more. Everything you present,
So a good editor, maybe.
a good editor is what you need, right? Because there's always going to be time for them to ask questions, follow up, leave a little bit for that. And sometimes, as they say, the more you talk, the less impressive you sound. So maybe I should just stop talking more.
Yeah.
It is not counterintuitive for the podcast. I think in here, the more you talk, the better it is. So, Min, like over the last many months or a couple of years, you have embarked on the journey of exploring and using and developing many AI focused tools. And if you open today any kind of platform, either LinkedIn or Insta or YouTube, we are bombarded by different AI tools that is releasing, I think, with the blink of an eye, every other tool. I want to present a scenario and I want to understand from you how to navigate this scenario. The first one, or the one, is for the founders who are first time AI founders who have no technical background as such. How do you recommend that they structure their AI discovery, pilot or POC, or a value proposition for that matter?
Yeah. Okay. So great question. And irrespective of if it's to do with AI or some other tool, right? So back in the day, we might have called it data science. Now, obviously, the marketing bandwagon is we call everything AI. if you want that 10 million valuation, then it's got to have AI in it, right? And I think the fundamentals are still the same in that it all starts off with what it is that you're solving. What is that? So don't kind of think of what's the AI that I build into this. Really there's a lovely saying that I'm sure you've all heard: fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people that very much, and I hear it a lot in the pitches, is they'll talk about the solution, and comes back to the art of storytelling. The first part of any pitch should very much be about, let me put you in my world of why this is something that really needs to be solved, right? So, and that really engages with your audience, because if an investor, for example, is sort of gets on board in the first couple of minutes, and remember what we said about the attention span going to mush, if they can really believe it, oh my god, yeah, you're right, why has no one like solved this? I see this problem, all the time, right? The chances are they're going to listen to the rest of the pitch. If you automatically are into solution mode and say, okay, we've built this thing and it's a wrapper around ChatGTP, no one really cares, and the chances are the big LLMs will have probably built that in the next like 48 hours anyway. So one of my sort of key things I would say to people is, don't just think that you need to use AI for the sake of AI, because it's cool, that's okay, but the fundamentals of what it is that you're actually solving, and then you can get into what are the right tools, techniques for solving that problem. But don't kind of forget about the fundamental part of, but is this a real problem that needs solving, right? And another lovely saying I like to say, and Satya, you'll have probably heard me many times say this: apart from your mum, who else will buy this, right? So there's a really good thing about, and I'm sure you've discussed it, but amongst all of you, product.
Well, that's a good take on the mom's test.
Yeah, the mom's test, right? And the lovely book, because and doing techniques such as the waitlist thing of people sort of just saying and just saying, hey, I'm building this thing or whatever, do you want to be on the waitlist? That's a good indicator that there's actual demand for what you're building.
Yeah.
The days of building in stealth for 2 years, and people, sometimes I get people pitching to me and say, you need to sign an NDA before I can like tell you my pitch. I'm like, tell you what, you keep your idea, that's fine, I don't need to hear it. So yeah, fundamentally it's still about the problem. But let's go back to the actual question that you asked in terms of what do I look for, what don't I look for as well. So if it's purely based on a wrapper around an LLM, then the chances are that's not going to exist in the next like 48 hours. I probably spend 3 hours a day, because I have a lot of time on my hands, as you can tell, just catching up on the last 24 hours of what's happened in the world of AI. Right. So back in the day, I used to be technical, but then the way it works in consultancy world is as soon as they find you can actually like talk and build connections and talk to clients, they're like, you get your hands off that keyboard, we'll get a junior to do that stuff. So I lost my technical skills like many years ago. But what all of these AI tools now mean is that you don't actually need technical skills anymore. I mean, it's helpful to kind of understand a little bit of how it works behind the scenes, but to be honest, not so much in this world of YouTube where you can fall down and give you like, here's some scripts and prompts, and here I've already built an agent, off you go and run it on your customers, and just type in the square box what your actual problem is, right? Another saying, I've got a whole load of sayings for you today for this podcast. Nowadays we're living in a world of, if something takes you more than 10 minutes to do, then you're like, come on, surely there's an AI for that. Previously, we'd happily spend half a day curating a PowerPoint presentation or some research, and now it's just madness. If you set someone, if you asked one of your team to say, right, I'll give you 2 weeks to do some research about our competitors and look at these products and how ours is different, right? And they're like, and you've got 2 weeks, and they're like, oh, come on, I'm going to need at least a month to do that. Now, if they ask you for more than 10 minutes, you're like, come on, don't this is like 2021, and we have all these lovely tools for doing that. So
2025.
Exactly, 2025. There you go. So what I typically do is I'll start to think of, well, what is that task that I want to do? Be that research, be that automation. And to be honest, a lot of the AI at the moment is very much in the automation space, as opposed to real artificial intelligence in its pure form. it's coming. Obviously, we have like the agentic stuff now with the agents, but in essence, it's still just gluing lots of different processes together. Where it's going next is very much like, okay, it's going to figure things out for itself. The more information it has, it knows your patterns, it knows about your style. It's starting to sort of send out emails on your behalf, taking calls on your behalf, creating in essence your digital twin. I think we're going to live in a world where we'll just have our AI personas talking to each other, right? And we're just like playing Call of Duty in the background or something like that. So that's kind of that's where it's going. And you can't do any better than just spend 30 minutes a week just looking at some of those. And again, I can share links to some of my favorite ones for you to share with your audience.
That would be great.
Around that's what that. And then the other one is just there's a ton of AI newsletters, right? So that's a really quick way of, because they tend to be encapsulate what are all the big organizations like OpenAI and Google and Meta and organizations like that doing with their latest models. But then they'll also have, here's some cool startups, here's some techniques, here's some prompts for you to test with. And again, very quickly, if you subscribe to a few of those, within 5-10 minutes, you've caught up on what's happened that day or week, depending on your time, what your time preferences are as to what's going on in the world. Don't feel as though you've kind of missed the boat on this, because I go to a lot of AI events and conferences where supposedly people have AI in their job title, because again, that sounds super cool, right?
Yeah.
Most of them might know two or three of the tools. They, even people with AI in their job titles are really just scratching the surface. Organizations are really just dabbling with this stuff. And Satya, me and you have talked a lot about ethics and compliance and risk and things like that. And it's that fine balance of this thing isn't going away. You need to kind of embrace it, but at the same time, you need to be aware of where's your data going, what you're doing, what you're sharing with the world, etc.
Certifications or certifying body like ISO or SOC 2, are they coming up something from compliance perspective? Hey, if you see our logo on some of these sites, then they should be the trusted ones. How is the score evolving?
Question. I'm not a real expert in that. That's why I tend to have people on my Modcast who are to answer that sort of question. But I would say go with like a well-known, trusted brand. Like with the certifications, I think that's kind of building up a little bit in the AI space in terms of, well, what qualifications and what credentials, etc., each one's has. But I couldn't tell you from the top of my tongue as to it's this particular certification.
I think it's also co-evolving, isn't it, Min? Because the more mistakes the AI does and the more like deepfake and all this starts to come up, the more compliance will be able to understand what to put in.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the whole space is evolving, and even the compliance and cybersecurity companies are still figuring out, what should be trusted and who should be trusted. And I think, like Min said, the better the brand, the more secure you are.
Yeah.
From this perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, there's always this balance of cautiousness and things which is very valid and totally there. But then there's also the thing of, well, you're only really going to learn what the capabilities of these things are by just trying them. And even if it's a case of, okay, let me use it for my personal life and see how I can use some of these AIs to help me improve my content, my editing, my videos. How can I, as we say, something that was taking a couple of hours, how can you take that down to a few minutes? And there's so many of these tools out there. As Satya knows, I spend a lot of time just like sharing, okay, this is this really cool thing that does this thing in a fraction of the time. And the more you just embrace those and learn what you can do. I mean, lots of people are now starting to use things like Otter for recording calls, transcribing them, summarizing them, giving them reaction points. And now it's become a very standard thing. I think there'll be one of those for literally every single task. There's a wider question then about, hello, what are we humans going to actually do going forward? So at the moment, the AI is not that great at doing dad jokes. So I think I've got like a few more months to go before I'm kind of done. I'm done with this.
Very soon, maybe. So Because you touched upon trying different tools
Yeah.
and testing out. I know from our own experience that you have tried more than 50 AI tools so far. And what stood your evaluation for using them the second time? Do you have some kind of framework that we can refer to and see whether that applies to us as well?
Yeah, so not as formal as a framework.
Hmm.
There's like every day there's like hundreds and thousands of like new ones that come out. I mentioned following a lot of the YouTubers who do these like really good like edits for the week of AI. So I look at what they're doing.
Hmm.
One of my criteria is, can I have a go with a free trial? And a lot of them, more and more now, because obviously they're a company that they're trying to make business.
Yeah.
More and more they entice you with like, with when you search for a Google link to something that looks interesting. And I was doing it actually yesterday because for some of the podcasts I we'd edited, Satya, I wanted to use an AI to summarize what the crux of that podcast was, create like a viral headline and some content to go with my LinkedIn post. And I was using this one called NoteGTP, which is like really cool, notegtp.io. And yeah, you can share a YouTube link with it, and then it would literally not only do the transcription, but then it does you a lovely summary. And I'd happily been using that for 6 months. And then
Hmm.
when I used it yesterday for yesterday's podcast that I created, it's like, hello, can I have some money now, please, right? And then I was like, damn, money, what's that? Let me go and see if there's anything else I can use, right? And so like then I spent the next hour and I came across so many different links like this can do it, this can do it. Download the app. And then the moment you do, it's like sign up for our free trial. And I think like it's so one of my criteria is at least let me have a go with something, which to be honest, no GTP, it served me for 6 months plus, right? So fair on them to try and get some money out of me now. But a lot of these ones, if I go from it, so lots of people will say, "Oh yeah, I have a subscription for ChatGTP, and then I also pay for this," and I'm like, "Really? Okay." There's so much like things that are available, and because it's still a bit of an arms race, and people are after, we have like hundreds and millions of users. They're after more of that because they're still sort of growing the capabilities, etc. So cool things that are out there that don't cost you anything before
Yeah.
you go and pay for a subscription for something that you might not necessarily use.
And which tool amongst this would you recommend to somebody starting from zero,
Yeah,
maybe a podcaster or a tech
yeah.
team?
There's even within some of the tools now, it's got AI built into it. So if I think to just creating the podcast and the various tools that I use that incorporates AI, so I record it with like we're using Riverside right now for recording this podcast. But I use something called Wave Room, right? Which has sort of probably like 70% of the functionality. It's totally free. Indian. It's like, come on, we love a bit of free. Um, and so and it does the trick. It'll do like it'll do the recording. It does like high definition. Okay, it's only for 30 minutes, but then that's good for my attention span anyway because I can't hack more than 30 minutes. So I'll use that for recording it, and then I'll use this other app for doing editing called InShot. And again, I started with a free trial, and then I'm like, actually, this is really good. I'm going to pay, so I have a subscription for InShot, and that has tools in there where it'll do what's known as AI cut, and it automatically take out the ums and ahs, which I do quite a lot. It'll pause it. It's now doing like HD enhanced, so it actually makes everyone look wonderful. And yeah, he has all the sound effects. You can do lots of the effects on there as well to keep it interesting for people. So I put it into that, but then I'll also use
Lead.
Veed captions. So Veed caption will automatically then create the captions for the podcast because my daughter told me when she saw my first podcast, she goes like, "Dad, that's embarrassing. You need to make it like a little bit more modern." So then she showed me some of these tools. So yeah, Veed captions is great. But then to your question as well, I would put it into something like Notebook LM. So once I recorded it, I would put it into Notebook LM, and then I'd get the AIs to create a podcast about my podcast, which I would then put on Spotify, right? So
Yeah.
that's another link to it. There's so many different avenues with using the AI, with getting your content, and I'm sure it's something you do a lot, I know as well, is make it once and then how many different ways can you slice and dice it using AI. But something that typically would have taken me a week or so to edit is literally like 20 minutes, if that, for me to go from recording a podcast to having it ready out there. And then, as I said, I'll use something like NoteGTP to actually create the viral headline. And then I'll use something like ChatGTP to create an image. Or, as you might have seen on my Modcasts, I'll do a little jokey video like we did for deepfakes, where we turned us into deepfakes ahead of talking. Yeah, it's all based on using AI in a fraction of the time. But the main message to take away is just have a play, and even if it's for personal use, just see what's possible to do. And yeah, if you can type in a box, you're there. That's all you need to do.
So, a bit of a rapid fire min on the AI tools. So, which AI tool surprised you the most?
I think InShots, because I am no editor, but it's made it so easy for me to do. I can use it on my phone, I can use it on my iPad, I can use it on my desktop, and it just makes you look semi-professional. Doesn't take much time to do, it doesn't take much effort to do, and you can come up with something that's sort of half decent. Yeah, that's one that I'm using a lot.
That's one of the popular tools.
Yeah, that one. And I've started, after your recommendation, Satya, to have a play with Canva Pro more and more as well. Particularly for things like LinkedIn and creating carousels and the like. Because all of these tools are now merging, right? What one tool was doing, they all started to say, hey, we can do that, we can do this, etc. Yeah. Again, it really depends on what are you spending a large portion of your day doing, and then what's a good tool for you to help automate and make what you're doing much more efficient. But InShot's a super fun one for me right now.
And which one didn't live up to the hype for you?
I'm not sure. Let me think. What I think some of the video, creating the video generation ones, like I was reading an article just this morning about, there was this really big hype about the new Google one, VO.
Yes.
VO3.
Yeah.
And although they made it look like, oh my god, now it does not only the video, it does the voice, and everything's there. What's going to happen to Hollywood and Bollywood and stuff? People who have been testing it a lot more have said, yeah, it's a little bit still smoke and mirrors, and it's not quite there. But with everything, as they say, again, another saying, this is the worst it's ever going to get. It's only going to improve. And if we think of that,
it's only going to improve. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. The other one, which is the opposite of the question you've asked me, which I've just found absolutely amazing, has been some of the music tools, where it automatically creates a song for you based on you typing again in a box in a style of a particular music style, and that's quite good. A recommendation for people is Google have what's known as like a Google Labs, and they have a ton of different tools that they put there for anyone to have a play with, and that's how they test a lot of their technology before it becomes more mainstream. And there's some wonderful ones on there for people to look at, which are really, really interesting, just to see what's coming down the future, and they're all free as well, so check them out.
Then maybe a pressing question is, I think because we work so much on AI tools, creating fund bots, creating agents and all, we are used to AI now in a positive manner, which I want to believe. And Min, if AI disappeared tomorrow, what would you miss the most?
Wow, if AI disappeared tomorrow, you know what? I might have to start talking to Mrs. Min again. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. This is the secret to a 31-year-old marriage. So a really interesting topic, more seriously, is where some of these AI tools are in terms of, we've seen studies show that people are turning to AI for things like empathy, right? Compassion, care. And there's a number of tools, and I'll think of the one I'm specifically thinking of in a second, where because they're like so positive because they've been trained like that, and a number of these tools now will, rather than just hey, I'll ask you a question, give me an answer, they will engage with you in a conversation, and they'll say to you, hey man, how's your day going? And you'll say something back, and it's like, oh, that's really cool, but what part of that did you really enjoy the most? And in this world of where we're more connected than ever but actually more lonely than ever, I think in the future,
True.
particularly as we're kind of, all of these technologies are fusing together, right? So now we have like AI and all the smartness that brings. We have this thing of where it can sort of mimic empathy, or it's kind of learning how to do that. Then now coming, in the future, it's moving into like humanoid robots where we'll have like pet dogs, which will kind of do what real dogs do without messing up your floors and stuff, and the vet bills. I think it's
Yeah.
exciting, but it's also a danger that because they're so agreeable and everything, they'll pretend to laugh at my dad jokes, and it's like, oh, that's so funny, tell me another one. That there's a danger that we lose connections with humans and we'll just be with that. So it's hard to go back, right? Once it's the genie's out of the box, it's hard to go back to a world without like the technology and the AI. So yeah, don't forget to kind of still stay human and talk to people from time to time as well, just in case like the electrics cut out and the air isn't available. Then what are you going to do?
I wanted to ask is how can people reach out to you in even if the AI is existing today, how can they still reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way is through LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn most hours of the day. So yeah, I'm on as Min Bhogaita, and yeah. If anyone has any specific questions and they want to get my personal email address, it's a very professional one. You'll be pleased to know. I'm sure you wouldn't have expected anything less. It's a small man called Min at gmail.com. So there you go. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Min. It's an absolute pleasure having you on.
no, totally.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom, the storytelling techniques, and to all our listeners, stay curious, stay connected, and keep building what matters.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.